Tonight on Reporting Scotland. Analysis of the budget reveals day-to-day spending on public services will go down, but capital spending and loans will rise. Could repeatedly heading a ball be linked to dementia in former footballers? Scottish experts are hoping to find an answer.
If there was a link, I'd be quite worried that maybe down the line I may suffer from dementia. But again, I can't worry about something I don't know.
Also on the programme, Dundees' bid to be crowned European Capital of Culture in 2023 is over and Brexit's being blamed. Is it time to see minimum pricing for smoking? A study suggests raising the cost of cigarettes will help people give up the habit.
Come on, Kez! You got this!
And braving the creepy crawlies of the jungle, Kezia Dugdale gets stuck into her first I'm a Celebrity task. Good evening. Newly published figures show that day-to-day spending on Scottish public services will be cut by nearly £200 million in the coming year. That's after inflation is taken into account. But the overall package for Scotland, including capital spending and loans, is up. The aftermath of yesterday's UK budget provoked furious exchanges at Holyrood. Here's our political editor, Brian Taylor.
The Chancellor, in Leeds today with the Prime Minister, insists he has delivered for Scotland £2 billion more over 4 years. But Scottish ministers say it's a con and they're being asked to make bricks without sufficient straw. Nicola Sturgeon said more than half the money is in financial transactions. That's loans or funding for private projects. It isn't for frontline public spending and it has to be repaid to the Treasury.
Question number 1 from Ruth Davidson.
But Ruth Davidson of the Tories said ministers were happy to trumpet such cash deals when they were announcing Scottish investment. She accused Nicola Sturgeon of hypocrisy.
Money that can be spent on housing, no thank you. Money to tackle fuel poverty, how dare the UK government. Only this First Minister could be handed an extra £2 billion in spending power and still sound like somebody has stolen our scone.
First Minister.
The First Minister insisted that Scotland was left short.
Scotland is facing a real terms cut in our day-to-day budget next year of more than £200 million. If Ruth Davidson is prepared to stand up in this chamber today and somehow argue that that is a good deal for Scotland, then Ruth Davidson is even more of a party stooge for our Westminster masters than I thought she was.
The independent Scottish Parliament Information Centre has crunched the numbers. For the year ahead, they find that the Scottish block grant from the Treasury is up 0.1% in real terms. That's after inflation. But within that, capital investment, for example on new buildings, is up 6.2%, and those financial transactions are up 8.1%. Day-to-day spending on health, education and the rest is down by 0.8% on £199 million. Richard Leonard, the new Labour leader, used his first appearance at First Minister's Questions to demand more public spending and higher taxation. He listed the challenges.
250,000 children in Scotland living in poverty. Hundreds of thousands of pensioners this winter facing the choice between eating and heating. More of the same just won't do. Scotland needs real change and radical change.
Nicola Sturgeon said she would defend public services but also protect the lowest earners.
Patrick Harvey.
To do so, she may need a deal with Patrick Harvey of the Greens, who urged substantial tax reform.
And Brian joins me now. Brian, more to come on tax and public spending in the coming weeks when the Scottish Government unveils its own budget.
Yeah, absolutely, Sally. I mean, we had the UK budget yesterday and a lot of it applies to Scotland on defence, on welfare, on benefits generally. But a lot of it doesn't apply. It doesn't apply to devolved spending on issues like health and education and justice. They're controlled right here at Holyrood. And crucially, it doesn't apply to Scottish income tax rates and bans. They are also decided here at Holyrood. We will get the details of both of those, devolved spending and Scottish income tax, in 3 weeks from today. Now, you heard Nicola Sturgeon say there that she wants to protect public services, but also protect the lowest income families in Scotland. But I think that leaves some room for manoeuvre. We had an options paper a couple of weeks ago. The SNP manifesto promised to freeze the basic rate of income tax. That's the 20 pence rate that most people pay. I do not see them departing from that, but what I think they could do is alter the bands. That's the point at which you begin to move into a higher stage. It doesn't mean to be you move into the 40 pence rate. Perhaps you have a figure somewhere in the mid-30s of income that you start to move up a little bit in the level of income tax that you pay. It's complicated, it's difficult, it's challenging, but it is intended, as Nicola Sturgeon said, to bring in more money to protect public services. Now, the controversy there is, one, will it work? And two, will it cause a political row? To the first, that's up to you. To the second, it'll cause one hell of a political row.
Brian, thanks very much for that. Glasgow University and the SFA's Hampden Sports Clinic are to lead a major study into whether former footballers develop conditions like dementia because of repeatedly heading a ball. It comes after growing concerns about the link between excessive heading and long-term brain damage. More from our sports reporter, David Curry.
This Scotland international played more than 280 games for clubs here and in England. A centre-forward who scored many of his 60-plus goals with his head. He admits to being concerned there's a possibility the job he loved may cost him his health in later life.
If there was a link, I'd be quite worried that maybe down the line I may suffer from dementia. But again, I can't worry about something I don't know. And until that study becomes more clear, then I think we'll start talking about it in more depth then.
McLean, it's a beautiful one, squares a goal!
More than half a century ago, the scorer of this headed goal was helping Kilmarnock become Scottish champions. Now, in his 80s, Davy Snedden has dementia. His son convinced heading a football is to blame.
There's about 50% of Dad's squad have all suffered from a brain-related illness. But if you look at Scotland as a whole, it's only about 6% of males over 65. That's an awful lot of a difference.
A lack of research data has prevented experts proving or disproving the theory that repeated heading of a football can cause long-term damage to the brain. Staff here at the Hampden Sports Clinic and at Glasgow's Queen Elizabeth University Hospital will address that over the next couple of years. They'll compare the incidence of dementia in about 15,000 former professionals to that of the wider public to determine whether there is a specific link.
I think it's a very big moment for not just for football but for sport, because this is us getting an opportunity to look into a sport and without any bias or influence look at the dementia risk which we've been concerned about for many years now in that sport.
If a link between repeatedly heading a football and dementia is established, there will be wide-ranging implications, not just for the footballing authorities, but for anyone who plays the sport. There have already been calls from some quarters for a ban or a restriction placed upon heading the ball at some levels of youth football. David Curry, reporting Scotland, Hampden Park, Glasgow.
The Scottish Youth Parliament is being investigated by the police after claims of possible harassment and inappropriate behaviour by members and former members. SYP says it referred the matter to Police Scotland after becoming aware of a new series of historic allegations. Lisa Summers reports.
The last time the Scottish Youth Parliament met, it was here at Holyrood last month, but ordinarily they would meet at various locations throughout the country in order to campaign for issues that concern young people, so things like mental health or poverty. There are around 150 MSYPs aged between 14 and 25. Now, it's unclear the exact nature of these claims, but the Scottish Youth Parliament issued a statement to us earlier this afternoon whereby they say that they take any allegations of harassment or inappropriate behaviour very seriously and investigate in line with their policies. Now, they say that they referred a matter to the police when it became clear about a new series of historic claims earlier on this month. The police say that an investigation is underway and inquiries continue to see whether there are any criminal allegations being made.
Lisa Summers there. Police Scotland officers are under investigation for gross misconduct for their response to concerns raised about the Emma Caldwell murder inquiry. The officers were found to have obtained communications data without judicial permission while trying to identify a journalist's sources. The Police Service of Northern Ireland is carrying out the inquiry. Ms Caldwell was working as a prostitute when her body was found in woods in Biggar in Lanarkshire in May 2005. Dundee's bid to be crowned European Capital of Culture in 2023 has been dealt a fatal blow. The European Commission has announced that no UK city can now be considered for the title because of Brexit. Dundee was one of 5 UK cities vying for the accolade. Andrew Anderson reports.
Not the Christmas present Dundee was hoping for, more of a bombshell. Just a month ago, hopes were high the city could win a huge cultural prize. Now Brexit's put paid to that.
Seems a bit unfair.
Absolutely willing to pay that price for Brexit.
If it's going to put a stop to all these kind of things, then it can't be good for Dundee as a city either.
Dundee came together in a blaze of colour last month to send off its bid to be European Capital of Culture in 2023. If successful, huge benefits were anticipated. Developments like the V&A Museum, due to open next year on the city's waterfront, are already heightening the city's cultural profile. The news it and the other 4 UK contenders could no longer take part came just days before they were due to meet the judges.
Our transport was all arranged. We would be flying down to London on Monday to make that pitch, and it is absolutely gutting for everybody involved. But more than that, it's gutting for everybody within the whole city. And this was really a bid that had re-energised, I think, and refocused people's mindset on what Dundee was becoming.
But the European Commission says, given that the UK will have left the EU by 29th March 2019 and therefore be unable to host the European Capital of Culture in 2023, we believe it makes common sense to discontinue the selection process now. Back in 2013, Dundee lost out on its bid to be this year's UK City of Culture. The Capital of Culture prize would have been even bigger.
I wrote a year ago to the UK government to make sure that they were doing what they could to make sure that Dundee could bid as a City of Culture, and they need to be making sure that they rectify this issue, that they contact the European Commission and they put on these bids back on track if that is at all possible.
So Dundee's hopes from a month ago may have been dashed, but tonight there is a determination to bounce back.
And Andrew's in Dundee for us tonight. So Andrew, is this it? Is it the end for Dundee's bid?
Well, the UK government is saying tonight that it doesn't agree with the European Commission's stance. Now, it is the case that other non-EU countries have had capitals of culture in the past, including Norway, Turkey and Iceland, but they are members of other European institutions, and the Commission seems to have decided that as it simply doesn't know what Brexit's going to look like after 2019, then it's time to tell the UK cities that they can no longer participate in the competition. Now, I sense a real anger amongst the bid team here in Dundee tonight. They'd prepared an 80-page bid document outlining 100 projects, but there's also a determination now to put this to one side and continue with the efforts to promote Dundee as a cultural destination on a world stage. This building, the V&A Dundee Museum of Design, it's on track to open in the latter half of next year. It's hoped it will bring hundreds of thousands of people to Dundee to see what this city has to offer, capital of culture or not.
Andrew, thank you very much. Scotland's already introducing a minimum price for alcohol. Could tobacco be next? A study published by the University of Edinburgh and NHS Health Scotland suggests increasing the cost of tobacco and reducing its availability could cut the number of smokers in Scotland. The Scottish Government is due to publish its tobacco strategy next year, but says it has no current plans to look at minimum pricing. Katie Hunter reports.
Robert's been smoking since he was 11. He's tried several times to quit.
The doctors warned me about cigarettes. I've got a bad cough and all that, you know. Well, that's a smoker's cough. It's natural.
And if they were to get more expensive, what would you think of that?
So I'll give it up.
A group of health experts says increasing the cost of tobacco in Scotland could persuade more people to quit. But it's untested.
This idea of a minimum price for tobacco, that's never been done before. So it's
doesn't exist anywhere else across the world. So it'll be something that's really new.
The number of people smoking across Scotland has stayed fairly static since 2013 at 21%. That rises to 35% of adults in more deprived areas, compared to just 1 in 10 in the most affluent parts of the country.
Well, we've no current intentions to look at minimum unit pricing for cigarettes. It's something that we've been successful in terms of alcohol with the recent Supreme Court judgment, but there are different set of circumstances surrounding people's tobacco habits. So what we will be concentrating on is looking at ways in which we can advance our ambition to create a smoke-free generation in Scotland.
The study also suggests reducing the availability of tobacco in shops.
7:35 minutes.
As well as a media campaign encouraging people to quit. Pro-smoking groups say those ideas are a waste of money. And as for minimum pricing,
well, I think it's quite wrong to increase the price of tobacco, putting up tax in order to force people to quit. It targets people who are on low pay and it discriminates against them, and it's totally wrong.
Shettleston in Glasgow is among the most deprived areas in Scotland. So would minimum pricing persuade people here to quit?
No, not with hardline smokers. They'll never give up.
It's too expensive, definitely. I think it is putting a lot of people off.
And if it was to get even more expensive?
Oh no, I would just stop it completely.
You know, I lost my father to cancer and that, and my wife lost her mother to cancer, and they were both smokers, and me and my wife smoked.
The Scottish Government will publish its tobacco strategy next year. At the moment, minimum pricing remains a recommendation, which may never become a reality. Katie Hunter, Reporting Scotland.
You're watching BBC Reporting Scotland. It's 6:45. A reminder of tonight's top story. Analysis of the budget reveals that day-to-day spending on public services will go down, but capital spending and loans will rise. And still to come.
Come on, Kez! You got this!
Braving the creepy crawlies of the jungle, Kezia Dugdale gets stuck into her first I'm a Celebrity task. Firefighters have staged a demonstration outside the Scottish Parliament to protest against what they call the untenable cuts to frontline staff numbers. Unions say that 700 jobs have been lost since the formation of a single service in 2013. That figure is disputed by those in charge, who insist change is needed. Stephen Godden reports.
When these firefighters joined a single national service, they were told frontline services would be protected. A promise, they say, which doesn't match today's reality.
5 years ago, we never had a situation where you would have ghost appliances sitting in stations, unstaffed, unavailable, and given this thin veneer to the public that there's an emergency resource available there, which indeed it's not.
People don't really think about us on a day-to-day basis. It's only when they need us. It's only when they want us, they expect us to be there, and they expect to get a professional service. And they do get us a professional service, but in the future, it might not be as quick as what it was in the past.
Scotland's fire service is based on a model dating back to the 1940s. There's consensus it needs to change, but what that looks like is the source of tension. Those in charge say the status quo is unsustainable, a conclusion underpinning a recent options paper.
The document spoke about a need for the service to rebalance firefighter numbers and review its station footprint. These firefighters took a more direct meaning: cuts and closures.
It is about making best use of the facilities that we've got and be able to improve the outcomes for the people of Scotland and better prepare firefighters for how they deal with the changing circumstances they need. Better training, better provision. Will there be as many firefighters? There might not be, but that's a consultation.
They also want to discuss an expansion of the firefighter's role, offering emergency medical care or a terrorist response. Nothing, say fire chiefs, that isn't already done on an ad hoc basis.
We're talking about expanding the role of a firefighter, but yet talking about cutting down stations and firefighters' numbers. That's telling us we're asking firefighters to do much more and for far less, and that's not acceptable.
Yesterday's UK budget brought good news on VAT for the fire service. The Scottish Government point to the extra £22 million it received this year. But today's protest was staged, knowing a Holyrood budget is fast approaching, a public reminder of the difficulties facing a valued public service. Stephen Godden, Reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
The Celtic captain Scott Brown says last night's 7-1 defeat in Paris must never be allowed to happen again. The Parkhead side were given a Champions League masterclass by tournament favourites PSG, but they can still secure European football into the new year in their final group match. Kardinitsan has more.
When you see goals like these, a question springs to mind. Are PSG potential winners of this season's Champions League? They are, according to the man beaten 7 times last night.
That's probably the best team I've ever seen playing football, and definitely the best team I've ever played against. So they were very clinical. The chances they created were good chances, but the quality of finishing on show was very good.
The same could be said of Celtic's start, ahead inside a minute as Moussa Dembele made his mark on his native city. But that was as good as it got for the Scottish champions. Some slack play led to a PSG equaliser shortly afterwards, and when 3 further goals followed, Celtic were 4-1 down after 35 minutes, and the game was gone.
You've got to try and learn from that, as everyone says, and it's a hard one to take, but we need to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
That desire has added impetus given recent results. The 7-0 beating by Barcelona last year is Celtic's worst European defeat. The 5 PSG scored at Parkhead is the Glasgow side's worst home defeat in Europe, while last night's loss is their 2nd worst on the continent. Harsh lessons are still being learned.
You know, if you give the ball away, you don't see it for 5, 10 minutes sometimes, and yeah, it's difficult, but the aim was to be in Europe after Christmas, and we're still on course to do that, so it's one last push in the Anderlecht game at home.
This is the state of Group B with 1 match to go. PSG and Bayern had already qualified for the last 16. Celtic will secure 3rd spot, and with it a place in the Europa League after Christmas, if they avoid a 3-goal defeat to Anderlecht in a fortnight. One thing's for sure, Celtic are delighted to see the back of Paris Saint-Germain. Kardinitsan reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
Derek McInnes will not be leaving his job at Aberdeen to become the Rangers manager, according to his club chairman, Stuart Milne. He says McInnes has told him he's no intention of leaving the club anytime soon and that he wants to win more trophies for the Dons. McInnes has been Rangers' preferred candidate since the departure of Pedro Caixinha a month ago. Well, one face missing from Holyrood today was, of course, the former Scottish Labour leader, Kezia Dugdale. She's been making the headlines this week because she's taking part in the reality TV show I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. And tonight, we see her swap political confrontations for the challenges of the jungle. Glenn Campbell has the story.
I'm Kezia Dugdale. I'm best known for leading the Labour Party in Scotland.
But for the next 3 weeks, she's taking time out in the Australian jungle.
People have definitely seen me deal with a few rats and snakes in my time. I've just got this feeling the jungle's going to be a whole heap tougher.
Let the games begin.
Come on, Kez.
Come on, go.
Tonight, she's straight into her first bush tucker trial, the Downing Creek Challenge.
I can't find it. Oh, it's here. No, it's not.
She has to find a red star among fish guts. Meanwhile, back at Holyrood...
It certainly doesn't look like a holiday.
You'd surely find a star in amongst all those entrails, would you not?
Well, I'd have a go, yes, but yes. I mean, a farmer's daughter, remember. I'm used to some pretty awful stuff, but...
You'd cope fine?
I don't know.
Well, I wasn't quite sure what was going on there, but I think what wasn't going on is Kezia talking about Labour values, which is why she said she was going to the jungle, so...
Come on, Kez!
I must be sat on it. He's smashing through it.
Oh, what's this?
It's not here.
Not sure she's going to win that challenge, though.
No, I don't think she'll beat him tonight, no.
She's had to deal with worse in Scottish politics, I dare say, but no, I think we should be proud of her, right? Team Kez.
I'll maybe be voting for some bush tucker trials on the app at some point.
To keep her in?
To see her doing some more challenges like that.
We're told the First Minister will be watching, but what about Kezia Dugdale's Labour colleagues?
Richard, will you be watching Kez in the jungle tonight?
Probably not. I've never watched the programme so far. Don't intend to start now.
I
think Kez needs some encouragement here, guys.
Go on, Kez, you got this.
Or maybe she hasn't, and that's why millions tune in to find out. Glenn Campbell, reporting Scotland.
Now for a look at what's happening later on Timeline, here are Shireen and John to tell us more.
Tonight, the former football starlet who says he's been cheated of the chance of justice after his alleged abuser died.
The biggest bugbears on a night out if you're disabled
And the widow of Hollywood legend Gene Kelly on his location scouting trip to Scotland for Brigadoon.
And as Kezia Dugdale heads into the jungle, we speak to ex-contestant Christine Hamilton.
That's tonight's Timeline, 7:30, BBC 2 Scotland.
Let's get the weather from Christopher. That snow you forecast last night caused some disruption this morning. Is there more on the way?
A little bit. In fact, let's take a look at some of the pictures, Sally. Thank you. Good evening to you. It was a wintry start for some of us this morning. Great pictures, though, coming in from our weather watchers. Molly the dog, the star of this one. And take a look at this picture, a beautiful one from parts of the northeast of Aberdeenshire. Those cold conditions still with us tonight, though, and in fact, our attention is on the risk of ice. There's a Met Office yellow be aware warning in force from now until tomorrow morning. And again, a number of showers in the west and north, wintry over the hills and high ground, but occasionally to lower levels as well. Further east, it's dry but cold, where there's snow on the ground, -9, -10 in the countryside. So tomorrow, a cold day. And a fairly breezy day as well, feeding in a number of showers. And again, those showers will be wintry at times. The best chance of any dry, sunny weather will be towards the east. So here's tomorrow in detail. It's a cold, icy start. Frequent showers again in the west. Very windy in the far north with gale or severe gale force winds here. And driest and brightest in the east, as I say. But in the west, after that cloudy, wet start, we'll start to see some sunshine coming through out with the showers at times. What you'll notice tomorrow, though, is just how cold it is. 4 or 5 Celsius for central and southern Scotland. Further north, 2 or 3 probably at best. And despite some sunshine, add on the wind, it's going to feel bitter. Still a number of showers giving some snow flurries across the hills and high ground, and again, occasionally to lower levels. Now, the rest of the afternoon into the evening and overnight, little in the way of change, really. Those showers still quite frequent in the west, elsewhere cold and again a risk of ice. And Saturday, well, little in the way of change here either. Again, windy from the northwest, driving in showers, temperatures up a notch, but in the wind it's still going to feel really quite cold indeed. Driest and brightest as ever in the east. And Sunday, well, probably the better of the 2 days this weekend. Small ridge of high pressure affording dry, fine, sunny weather, but it will be cold. That's the forecast for now.
Christopher, thank you. Now, a reminder of tonight's main news. Newly published figures show that day-to-day spending on Scottish public services will be cut by nearly £200 million in the coming year. That's after inflation is taken into account. But the overall package for Scotland, including capital spending and loans, is up. And that's all from the team on Reporting Scotland for now. I'll be back with headlines at 8 and the late bulletin just after the 10 o'clock news. Until then, from everyone on the team here and around the country, have a very good evening. Bye for now.